Once you've got your deer down, the next step is field dressing it. Here's a quick look at how I do it, and then we'll visit Leroy Meats in Fox Lake to let a pro take over from there. There are a number of ways to field dress a deer. We've got a nice adult buck and a good-sized doe here, and I'll show you how I do it. And the first cut is actually right around the anal opening. Now you can just cut off the genitals if you want to. If you remove them like this, you'll actually be able to pull them back through the body cavity with the rest of the entrails. We'll come up to the brisket and find the bottom of the breastbone, and I'm going to make a puncture, not too deep. You take the gut hook, find that opening, and it's basically just like unzipping the deer. Now, back to the knife, and I'm going to go up into the rib cage and cut the diaphragm. You want to cut that as close to the rib cage as possible. And while I'm here, I'm going to go up and loosen the lungs and the heart. Now we finish cutting around the diaphragm, and we should be able to roll all the entrails right out. That's all there is to it.
So here we have a carcass of probably a 1.5-year doe, and I'm going to show you guys how to go about breaking this down without using a meat saw of any sort. You just want to follow that line right down. You have the backbone that goes right down the center of the animal. So if you take your knife right down the backbone, kind of pull it with your thumb, and it'll kind of expose the backside. And just keep taking your knife. There's a pelvis bone right here. So you just take your knife and you follow that bone down. And if you're coming towards the cavity, eventually you're going to hit a ball joint. And that ball joint exposes itself right here. So the idea is to get behind that ball joint, and there's a little tendon that holds this into the socket. So you got to pop that tendon, get around that hook, come back down, come back towards that. You can see how that then exposes itself. So you get right in between there, and you just follow that bone straight down. So you want to go right in between that brisket, and you just keep pulling it, and it will start to separate. Follow it nice, right down that length of the animal. You make a slit, and you go ahead and turn your knife, go straight down the backbone, and you go ahead and you spin the animal. So you just want to get your knife right on top of those bones where the tenderloin was laying, slowly moving yourself down the carcass. And you just keep on working down, using your thumb to always pull the meat away from the bone, and the back strap comes out right to the base of the neck. You find the vertebrae on the animal here, and you get the ribs cut up to it, and you go ahead and just put your knife right in the middle of that vertebrae, and then it separates. And go ahead and cut that straight through, a little tug down, and it pops right off. Come right down that vertebrae, and we're going to just follow that straight up. You just keep working your knife right over them, and then you get all that veins and all that glands out of there. If you just get in between the connective tissue, you just pull that off right down to the center of the animal. So if you take your knife and you go straight down from this tip, you will hit the femur bone. And then you just turn your knife, follow that bone all the way down to where that hip joint was. Take your knife straight down, right till you hit that bone again. Take your knife and just dip it in and just follow that bone around. That joint naturally opens up, so you just take your knife real slowly and you'll see how it pulls apart, straight down. So this is the Achilles tendon coming up. You just go ahead and cut that right at the base, and you just go ahead and trim that. And it should really only take about 2 or 3 cuts because that whole chunk of meat can come off at once. It does have a little bit of a cap on it, so if you just take your fingers and you just follow that seam straight back and you just cut it straight down. And then we prefer to butterfly just to make it a little bit larger portion. So when you butterfly, you don't go all the way through initially. You go right down to the table, just letting a real thin piece of meat. Then go ahead and duplicate that same width and go straight through, open it up, and then you have a nice butterfly steak. The fat cap will just pull right off, exposing the silver skin. And I just get my knife started underneath, go ahead and grab it, and then just guide your knife down. So I'm going to go ahead, cut 3/4 of an inch halfway through, then all the way through. So you just take your knife around that fat cap, find that elbow, you go right down to the bone, and you just follow that bone. So here's the clod. If you just follow that across and you start down one side, just like you're pulling the back straps off the back, you just follow that bone, go ahead and turn your knife, and then you can trim that meat right off that bone. Go ahead and do it on the other side. So those are some scrumptious bites ready for the grill.